Said, can you hear me okay?
Hi everyone, can you see my presentation chart and can you hear me well? Okay, great. I got a couple of yes, so that tells me that um, the network seems to work well in our favor this evening. So, assalamu alaikum, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending upon the time zone in which you are living right now. I hope you all either finished a great day, or you are in the middle of it, or you are about to start one, again, depending on the time zone where you are living. My name is Asim, and today we will talk about the evolving energy dynamics in the Middle East region. As we all can gather, the topic is really wide and has a lot of dimensions to it. And wrapping it up in a session of 45 minutes to an hour is a big challenge. So what I would try to do is I will touch some areas of growing importance. And if I leave you with more curiosity and the urge to research more around these topics, then I will consider the job well done. The introduction has already been made, and it has been, shared with you in the invitation as well. I think we can move on and get to the topic directly. You can find at the bottom my email address and the LinkedIn if you have anything else to discuss. Feel free to contact via Manchester Business School or drop me an email as convenient to you. So let's dive into the subject. We'll try to cover this whole discussion in 8 modules, and they are very short modules, so they're not going to be taking a lot of time. But just from the perspective of structuring. First of all, we will talk about Middle East's oil and gas positioning, something Middle East is famous for. Then we will try to look at mega trends in the Middle East region, which are shaping the region's dynamics. What are the energy drivers, industry drivers in the Middle East region? Middle East's competitive advantage in the area of solar. Saudi's renewable energy case study. Then we'll talk about the wind energy prospects in the Middle East. We'll touch base on the initiatives of the United Arab Emirates regarding the new energy dynamics. And then we will jump to the regional opportunities that are being posed and provided in the region. So first of all, start with the Middle East's oil and gas positioning. Now, if you look at the chart, and we will try to take a look at the energy dynamics from various charts instead of getting into a lot of bullet points and all that. So here I'm sharing a chart from the British Petroleum's Statistical Review of World Energy, the latest one. And if you look at this chart, you can see that Middle East holds almost 47.3% of the world's crude oil reserve. So in this particular area, and I hope you can see my arrow here, 47.3. This tells you the strong positioning in terms of crude oil reserve. That's a big position. It's almost 50% of the whole world. And it's always interesting to see who is the second player in the market. And with 19.4%, you can see that South and Central America emerge as the second leader. So here is a chart from OPEC. And if you look at this and try to analyze what this chart talks about the crude oil reserves from the OPEC perspective, then let's first try to understand OPEC, because I believe that we have a mix of participants here. Some of them could be on the expert level on energy, some could be those who are interested to learn. So we'll try to go from highs to low and in the middle to make sure everybody gets a good grasp on the subject. So let's understand OPEC first before diving into this slide. OPEC stands for Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC is basically a permanent but intergovernmental organization that was established in Baghdad, Iraq in 1960. Now, this organization has 12 members, and you can try to recall those members, but I'll give you a quick run here. Algeria, Angola, Ecuador, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Venezuela. It is headquartered in Vienna, Austria. Now, let's see that within the OPEC itself, Middle East remains the major crude exporting region. So even we have a lot of countries in OPEC outside the Middle East zone, Middle East is still the main chunk of the oil exports. Now, if you look at the projections, they also emphasize the continued leading role of the Middle East in international crude oil trade. And crude oil exports from the Middle East region are projected to reach almost 22 million barrels a day by year 2040, which is a pretty high number. Now, if you look here in the proven crude oil reserves between non-OPEC and OPEC, what you see here that between the period 2005 to 2014, OPEC member countries added almost 289.1 billion barrels to their total proven crude oil reserves. Now, that's a significant addition compared to other crude oil producers. Now, here's another chart, and again, it's another chart from OPEC, and it talks about the share of world crude oil reserves. So we started from the world. Now, from the world, we are converging to OPEC, and within OPEC, we are trying to converge on the Middle East, GCC countries, so that we can have a great picture of the overall oil scenario. Now, if you look at the data on this chart, it reflects that almost 81% of the world's proven oil reserves are located in OPEC member countries. Again, a very big position in oil. The majority of OPEC oil reserves are located in the Middle East, which constitutes almost 66% of the OPEC's total basket. And if you go down to the chart here, you can look at Saudi Arabia's share, which is 22.1%, Iran, Iraq, and you can just add up to see how the picture plays out. Now, in the last decade, there is a lot of efforts in terms of adding the production to the oil fields in this particular region. Now, OPEC's proven oil reserves stand at almost 1,206 billion barrels here. A very, very strong positioning in oil. Now, here is a chart that talks about OPEC's upstream investment plans. We all understand that given the oil price situation, the amount of investments have gone down. But if you still try to see the overall situation, the number of projects up to 2018 are still significant in a relative term. So it's not about that the projects have been completely shelved. Now here's a picture of the natural gas. So we are now moving from oil positioning to natural gas. You can see here that almost 42.8% of the natural gas reserves are located in the Middle East region. That's another very strong positioning in terms of gas. So we just tried to set a stage for the oil and gas positioning, and we just noted that as we keep hearing in the news bulletins and discussion that Middle East is very important from an oil and gas perspective, we just saw it happening from the data and charts as well. Let's try to see what are the mega trends in the Middle East region, shaping energy and other industries. The first mega trend in the Middle East is the population growth, and since it's a big one, we will just dive into this particular aspect a little bit more through some other charts. Then there is a challenge of rising unemployment in the Middle East region. Then we understand the VUCA geopolitical situation. Now, VUCA is a terminology sometimes people use VUCCA. It's about a situation where you have volatility, uncertainty, and there are complex and changing scenarios and ambiguity. So we understand there's a lot of VUCA geopolitical situation, and the geopolitics always drive the economy or the trends one way or the other. Then there is increased energy consumption in this region, which is driven by the population growth, the level of industrialization, the high level of incomes in the specific GCC region, and the fact that a lot of energy and a lot of utilities are subsidy driven. Although given the current oil price issue and the budget deficits in various economies, we are seeing a pressure that government is trying to withdraw subsidies in certain area. However, we still believe that the region is quite a bit subsidized in terms of utilities when compared to the developed world. Now, we will dive a little bit more on the population as I discussed. So here is a chart. And you can see this from world population prospects. In this particular chart, if you look at the growth rate on the right side, then basically you can see that between 2013 to 2040, 2013 to 2020, and 2020 to 2040, these are the growth rates per annum in terms of population. On the left side, you see all the regions of the world. Now, if you look at this chart and you try to see the projection from 13 to 40, and you just run vertically on this chart, then the biggest number that you see is 2.1%, and this 2.1% goes against the Middle East region. Similarly, if you try to look at the second number, the important one is almost 1.9, which is again OPEC. So this tells you in which part of the world you are going to see the biggest population growth in terms of charts and numbers. Another important aspect is the young population. So you can see the population which is under 20 years of age, which is termed as a Middle East youth bulge. Now here in this chart, again, you can see that Middle East and Africa in 2015 is almost at 50% population under 20. And the projection for 2040 is, although reduced, but it is still about 40%. So this tells us that Middle East is going to have a younger population for a significant period of time, which is a great advantage because younger population can always help the countries in terms of growing their economies. But at the same time, it also poses a challenge for the economies in terms of job creation. If you don't create jobs for youth, this results in social imbalances, which leads to a lot of challenges. Here is an urban and rural population growth rate from 2013 to 2040. Again, you can see it's the Middle East. That's the higher, almost the highest one compared with anybody else. And the next to it is probably China. And then you can also look at the OPEC here. So what's the significance of urban versus rural? We do understand that the more urban population is going to increase, there's more pressure in terms of utilities, in terms of growth and the demand of electricity, in terms of water supplies, and all the other amenities. The more urbanization happening in a country, the more pressure is going to be on its resources. So we discussed a few major trends that basically define the overall industry situation. Now we'll jump to module number 3, and you can see these modules are just for a little bit organization. And in terms of size, they are pretty small, and again, they are just touching the key areas for discussion. So what are the energy industry drivers in the Middle East region? We can think of 4, and again, under these headings, there could be many more. But we are going to talk about 4. The first, rising domestic energy consumption, the decarbonizing of electricity, water scarcity, and the possible land loss due to global warming. And we will dive into these 4 drivers one by one. So first of all, electricity demand growth. Now, if you look at the demand growth of electricity in the Middle East and North Africa region, it's like 7% per annum, and that's a big number. Now, within the MENA region itself, there are certain countries where the demand even goes above this level. So, for example, 7.5% per annum power demand growth in Saudi Arabia, which is even beating the 7% gasoline demand growth in the country. Now, Saudi Arabia's electricity demand is expected to exceed even 120 gigawatt by 2030. But let's understand where this electricity is being used. Almost housing sector is consuming almost 50% of the electricity in Saudi Arabia. And you can see because of the high temperatures, especially during the summers, a lot of this consumption goes toward air conditioning. Now this is demand growth, and we have to see that some of this demand growth is purely toward consumption economy. It's not towards industrialization that actually helps grow the country's economy and the GDP itself. Another thing that we need to understand is, and the data is available from 2011 from OECD. OECD, by the way, just for those people who don't know about OECD, OECD stands for Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's an international economic organization of countries that was formed, I think, in 1961 to stimulate economic progress and world trade. Now, if you see the global oil use and electricity generation charts, very interesting charts, how much oil is being used to generate electricity. And you can see OPEC is beating everybody else with a huge margin. So what does this mean? This basically means that a country that is producing crude oil, which can be exported and can generate a lot of foreign exchange revenues for the country based on oil export, is actually burning that oil to produce electricity, maybe to run the air conditioners. It doesn't look like a very prospective situation in terms of country's economy. So there is a need to do something about it. The second aspect of oil utilization for electricity generation is the fact that the more oil you burn to generate electricity, you are actually contributing toward greenhouse gas emissions and polluting the planet itself. So decarbonization of electricity generation is a very important component of greenhouse emission mitigation strategy. And we all understand that a lot of work needs to be done on changing electricity consumption behaviors and patterns in the region. There are low greenhouse gas energy supply technologies like renewables, nuclear power, CO2 capture and storage, which is called like CCS. They are the best bets for reducing emissions into the atmosphere. So another area to reduce emissions is the replacement of coal-fired power plants with modern natural gas combined cycle power plants. So OPEC member countries and Middle Eastern countries can face larger and even disproportionate impact due to implementation of strict policies, specifically aiming at reducing emissions in the oil sector. Let's look at a case. Let's go down and really understand one specific case here. So Saudi Arabia, what are the options? Consume energy or export? So 7% per annum domestic energy consumption. Energy demand to grow from 3.4 million barrels of oil equivalent to 8.3 million barrels of oil equivalent. BOE stands for barrels of oil equivalent. 3 million barrels per day of crude oil could get diverted to power sector consumption. Now saving natural gas for petrochemical feedstock instead of power gen fuel. So here we see the discussion that we just had, that do you want to export 3 million barrels of oil per day and make money out of it? Math is pretty simple. You just take a calculator, multiply 3 million barrels per day with the oil price. Let's put in a number like $50 per barrel and get a number per day. That's a direct loss into the exchequer of a particular country in terms of foreign exchange that it can earn. Similarly, we also need to see that in Saudi Arabia, for example, natural gas is supplied to the petrochemical sector, the industries that are located in Jubail and Yanbu area, as the feedstock to produce petrochemical that could be exported to, again, create more export value for the country. Now, if that natural gas is continued to be used for power generation fuel, it is sort of a loss to the economy. So now we move to the next driver, which is the water scarcity, a very, very important topic when we talk about the Middle East region. So we all understand that Middle East is one of the driest places in the world, and the average rainfall is between 20 to 40 centimeters versus a world average of almost 72 centimeters. you can see, I mean, it's a big difference here. Now, there has been a rapid population growth in the Middle East, almost like 3 times in the last 4 decades, and therefore scarce water resources came under further pressure in the last 20 years. Now, water desalination is being practiced in this region for more than 50 years, and Middle East has 50% of global desal capacity. Now, that's a lot. That's a great share. The GCC states, in particular, enjoy the largest share in terms of technology. GCC states use thermal technology, and the capacity is like almost 26 million cubic meters a day. Now, this is based on data that was collected several years ago. So this must be on the rise by now. If we just look at Saudi Arabia, for example, we will observe that it needs almost 70% of its water needs using desal technology. So a lot of dependence. So the question is, why are we talking about water here? We are just discussing energy. Well, water and energy are in close friendship to each other. Energy accounts for 75% of the supply cost of desalination. This excludes transportation and environmental costs, which need to be added. So higher cost is the biggest challenge of desalination. You have to understand that when a single drop of desal water is produced in the GCC region or the Middle East region, the cost of energy is almost 75% of the overall cost to produce it. That means, again, energy is being diverted toward production of water, and that energy could have been exported, or if there is an energy efficiency, that energy could have been saved for further advantage. The next driver is the global warming and land loss, and I think we are all seeing these effects more and more in the world. And every time there is a threat of rising sea level, we understand this is a subsequent threat of drowning of land. Countries can lose some of their land, and according to some study, the 1 meter sea level rise could erase approximately 41,000 square kilometers of land. Now, the countries that are standing at a bigger risk of loss of land are Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, some other countries. And according to a study, basically 5-meter rise scenario, Bahrain can lose like 13.4%, and Qatar can lose almost 6.9% of surface area. Now, we all understand that when you are landing in Bahrain and when you are landing in Qatar, you just see the Gulf waters next to your airplane. So it's pretty easy to envisage. That's another very interesting chart, world supply of primary energy reference case. Now, let's try to understand what is happening here. So on the left side, you have a lot of, technologies for fuels. And on the horizontal, you can see the levels, growth, and the fuel shares. So let's focus on the fuel shares here. If you see the growth in the middle, the percentage per annum growth, you can see the largest percentage per annum growth is occurring in other renewables, right? And other renewables here include solar and wind as well. Similarly, on the fuel share percentage, if you see, even up to 2040, in the scenario, you can see that other renewables are not going to be really significant. They are expected to be around 4%. Oil and gas and coal are expected to continue to dominate. But you can see that the growth rate is probably the fastest in other renewables. And sometimes you can always debate this, that look, you know what, since other renewables are growing from a small base, so they are supposed to make the biggest jump. Well, that's fine. That's understandable. But at the same time, let's keep in mind that this is an area that we can keep in mind for growth and opportunity. The next area is the Middle East's competitive advantage in solar. So we'll try to focus specifically on the solar side and see what Middle East has got to offer. Now, if you see this chart, and if you remember in the beginning, we just looked at the Middle East overall map. Here on the map on the left side, there is a plot of the Middle East region, and then there are areas where you can see the opportunity for solar CSP, solar PV, wind, and all that. Now you can see a lot of yellow circles here, right? These yellow circles are referring to the fact that these are potential areas for solar CSP technology. And where you see the triangles, you can see, or the squares, one way to see the treasure, not a triangle, it's maybe a four-sided figure. This four-sided figure basically shows you like the locations where you can have excellent wind corridors to generate wind power. Now, as you see in the renewable energy map of the Middle East, solar has relative advantage in this region. And the best technology for secure supply seems solar thermal, which is also called concentrated solar thermal power, the CSP. CSP basically uses mirrors to focus sun rays on heating fluids, and those fluids turn a power turbine. That's the theory behind it. Now, in the long term, cost can go down, and there are opportunities to produce combined solar power and water projects. Like we see in the Middle East, there are always IWPP projects. Now, there is potential to build transmission networks and supply clean energy even to Europe. So we will evaluate this in more detail soon. But let's keep in mind that the European partnerships can be established here. The Middle East region has a very strong track record of project financing, and IPPs can be established by a state-guaranteed long-term PPAs. PPA stands for Power Purchase Agreement. So these advantages need to be leveraged. Now, again, we will dive into detail about this solar by taking a case study of Saudi Arabia. There are some facts here. So Saudi Arabia is one of the hottest and driest countries. The maximum summer temperature often exceeds 45 degrees Celsius. Skies are clear most of the time, and there is vast open land that experiences high intensities of solar radiation and long hours of sunshine duration. In Saudi Arabia, there's a network of 35 stations where global solar radiation and sunshine duration is being recorded since 1970. And that's a pretty interesting fact for a lot of people, that this data gathering is going on for quite some time. Now, Saudi receives more than 5,500 watts per square meters average of global solar radiations each day on a horizontal surface. And the mean value of sunshine duration is almost 8.89 hours each day, and that makes it like 3,245 hours each year. Now, I understand there is some mathematics, numbers stuff is going on here, but unless you don't dive into these numbers, you cannot just multiply it and come up with tangible numbers that would make it work in terms of solar. So Saudi has a great advantage in solar, and it really has one of the highest solar radiation intensity on Earth. And it has the availability of large undeveloped desert area as well to build solar parks. So I think some people must be having empty quarter or Rubal Khali coming into their mind, a lot of space. And let's also remember that in less than 1,000 square kilometers can just meet the entire power demand over there. That's not a lot of area. There is availability of large quantity of sand as well in the deserts, which is a key raw material in solar technology, the polysilicon. Price for polysilicon in 2008 was pretty expensive. It reached up to $475 per kilogram. Today it's running, the spot price is running somewhere between 11 and 15. In Saudi, there is massive financing capacity to attract local and international investors. So local universities like KAUST they are expected to be the regional leaders in technology R&D with foreign partnerships. So great opportunities exist for Saudi. Saudi Arabia's renewable energy vision, there was an authority called King Abdullah City for Atomic and Renewable Energy that was made responsible to oversee their renewable strategy. The overall vision is stated here. But the key thing to remember is that this agency, CARE, was established by King Abdullah in April 2010, and the aim was to build a sustainable future for Saudi Arabia by developing substantial alternative energy capacity fully supported by world-class local institutions. Now, after extensive technical and economic analysis, the decision has been taken to introduce atomic and renewable energy for a significant portion of Saudi Arabia's future energy mix. The two sectors will provide substantial capacity, advanced technology, efficient use of resources, and will be fully compliant with international best practices, conventions, and treaties. So Qatar is expected to oversee Saudi renewable strategy and plans to generate 33% electricity using solar by 2032. The CSP is the most feasible technology, as we just discussed, and in this way, almost 523,000 barrels of oil equivalent per day could be saved over the next 20 years. So the same math that I explained to you. That what's the current oil price, for example, take $50 per barrel, multiplied by 523 barrels of oil equivalent per day. So you can see that it saves almost $26.1 million per day, and over a period of 20 years, it's almost very big number, goes in billions and millions of dollars. There is a proposed Saudi energy mix by 2032. But what I would like to highlight is that a lot of analysts, and you know what, this is something that Manchester Business School always focus on. It always talk about thinking hard, thinking critical. So every time you see a scenario, always try to understand where it's coming from. Take a second view, take a third eye, and come up with your own analysis. So a lot of analysts are discussing that the plan of Qatar was great, but the type of progress that was expected to be seen is not coming up. And recently, Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 announced a target of 9.5 gigawatts of renewable energy. So there is still a lot of gap in terms of execution of this plan. And this is like, in many situations and projects and all that, time is of essence, time is of money. So a lot of analysts believe that Saudi Arabia has a great opportunity to expedite these projects and get into the solar more actively, more proactively. The next is the export of solar-based electricity from Saudi. So you can see that there's a viable potential for exporting almost 10 gigawatt of electricity from Saudi Arabia to Europe via North Africa and Italy and Spain. So that sounds very, very interesting. Currently, there is almost a non-existent solar capacity in Saudi, almost like 10 or 11 megawatts. However, Saudi Arabia plans to expand the solar capacity. Now, if we think about winters and part of spring and fall, 45% of generation capacity sits idle in Saudi Arabia. Cooling takes more than 50% of electricity demand in summer, so exporting electricity makes sense to countries where peak demand coincides with Saudi off-season. So it is costly stuff. So what are the challenges of implementing electricity export? So on one side, we say, well, export is a great opportunity, but let's understand the challenges that need to be mitigated before it really gets into full execution. So electricity exports, the challenges, high cost. Another project of this nature called Desert Tech, for example, which is all about exporting electricity to Europe by North Africa, is estimated at almost 400 billion euros. That's a big number. And there are other implementation challenges like infrastructure development, laying the lines, erecting the transmission towers, then security of transmission lines and their installation. Then there are multi-country regulatory regimes that need to be taken care of, etc. So we just talked about solar competitiveness of the Middle East, and we dived into Saudi case, and then we looked at some opportunity and challenge. So what's happening in some of the countries in terms of wind power and wind energy? So in wind, we can see that if you recall from the resource part, the Red Sea coast, particularly at the Gulf of Suez, is one of the highest windy areas of the world. The coast between Abu Dhabi and Hurghada is the most favorable one, an average wind speed of 7 to 12 meter per second. So you just can't install a windmill everywhere unless you have a desired number of wind speed. So Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, they have an opportunity to harness its wind. Coastal zones in Egypt enjoy high wind energy potential. Um, Two of world's largest wind farms in MENA are in Egypt and Morocco. Egypt has the largest wind farm in MENA with almost 700 turbines to produce 550 megawatt. Saudi Arabia is also seeking to take advantage of Red Sea coastal areas and other areas with strong wind. Saudi announced 5 areas as targets for future wind farms. A 20-year PPA shall be signed with state-owned sustainable energy procurement company. Now, there is a minimum requirement of 20% local content in wind projects, so this will help develop the local industry and job creation for the locals. Some of the initiatives that UAE has taken in this area, first of all, we'll talk about solar. In solar, Shams 1, world's largest CSP power plant, is being installed. It's 100 megawatt first utility scale solar CSP, utilizes 258,000 mirrors. The location is great. I mean, it was selected based on space, solar radiation level, and grid connectivity. The next thing is the Sheikh Maktoum Solar Park, Dubai. And you all know that the Emirates of Dubai set a new world record for the cost of solar power on May 1st, 2016, with the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, DEWA, receiving bids for the 800 megawatt Sheikh Maktoum Solar Park Phase 3, as low as 3 US cents per kilowatt hour. This not only marks the lowest cost ever for solar power, but also easily beats all available fossil fuel options in Dubai on cost. Now, recently, Dubai has launched the world's biggest solar power plant worth 50 billion to be accomplished in 2030 with 5,000 megawatt energy. And the expectation is that 25% of Dubai's energy in 2030 will be clean energy, rising to 75% in 2050. Dubai is projecting to be the world's smallest carbon footprint city. And Dubai has also launched a 500 million AD research fund for clean energy and Dubai Green Fund with 100 billion clean energy investments. The next area is Masdar City. Now, Masdar City, high quality city, built with a cost of almost 18. Some people talk about 18 to 22 billion dollars. Some say 18 to 19 billion dollars. Seeks to be a vibrant global clean tech cluster, but its progress and success is under debate. So a lot of people, a lot of analysts believe that the city's progress in terms of the way it's going on is not as they were expecting in the beginning. So a lot of work needs to be done. So I think one of the key things is that when initiatives are announced, it is important that they're executed in a timely fashion, because otherwise, in many situations, just lose momentum. The next area is the nuclear. So the UAE is spending almost $20 billion on a nuclear power plant, which is still under construction. It's projected to use close to 25% of its electricity by 2020. Now, we talked about so many things, and I do believe we have a crunch of time. So what are the regional opportunities we can see out of this? What's in it for me? What's in it for you? And what's in it for everybody else in the region? So there is an opportunity to build infrastructure in the region, right? So when you have projects, you can build infrastructure. The energy sector can grow in different dimensions. It can create employment and solve some challenging questions for the region. A lot of work and projects that needs to be done can be done through local expertise, which can be developed. So this can expand engineering, manufacturing, and service sectors in the region. Now, of course, it will create clean energy and water. There's a lot to learn from developed countries and economies. So, for example, when it comes to renewable, people can see towards Denmark. People can see towards Spain and Germany and learn from their experiences. Now, we just talked about the excellent financing capability of the Middle East region, and they can count on local and international financing agencies to execute large mega projects. And all this can end in reaping economical and social rewards for the countries, for the society, which is the ultimate objective of the governments. So in 2014, I was talking about energy landscape in the Middle East somewhere, and at the end of the discussion, some people asked me a question. So, how do you see the future? And when they asked me this question, I showed them a slide. So, do I see some replies here? How do you guys see the future? Any replies? This can be in a single word, this can be in a sentence. Okay, so here's what I showed to them. And this is the future which is not in the short or medium run. Of course, we are talking about long run, because we just saw a chart that even in the next 30 to 40 years or 50 years, we see the dominance of oil, gas, and coal. But it's just about being a decision on becoming the early adopter and try to develop learning from developed economies who have never been in this area of renewables and all that. With this, I would like to thank you very much for your time and attention. And in case anybody has questions, you are most welcome to ask. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Asim. And I think actually some of the attendees responded. And Bijo said to your question about how do you see the future, he said still early for the renewables. Akram mentioned that we have to learn how to utilize our spending on renewable energy. And Martina said there's big potential in this region. And Akram said it was very informative as well. So any comments? Any comments on their comments?
Yeah, actually, I was just trying to go through their comments. Exactly, and I think one of the questions, it's too early for renewable. I think if we look at one of the charts that I shared, and I talked about it in my discussion, that yes, I agree that if we look at a 30, 40, 50-year time horizon, not for the Middle East region, but for the entire world, yeah, it's still going to be very heavy and dominant on oil, gas, and coal. There is no doubt about it. So nowhere we are trying to say that renewable is here to take over the world. But then we have to see that sometimes it's always a great idea. Somebody is saying last slide from module 3, share of energy. Can we see again, please? Sure, I'll open that from module 3. So the point is that in your basket, you create a diversified portfolio so you can take advantage of everything. It's not about that, we just replace every single dime of oil with renewable. No, it's not like that. But wherever you have an opportunity to export oil versus use it for electricity consumption, and that's an area of opportunity for you. So I'm on module 3, and Daniel is asking about last slide. Okay. From module 3. Yeah, that's the one. So here you see, this is the chart that I discussed. And if you look at this chart and you look at 2040 here, it's very obvious. Oil 24.3%, coal 27.1%, gas 27%, and renewables, other renewables 4%. Well, that's a very small number, but look at the growth potential. So what we are trying to say is that if in a lot of countries, and if from a lot of regulatory authorities, emphasis is coming up on clean tech, then here's an opportunity to explore. And yeah, I mean, go slow. Every time you try to learn something new, you should experiment, you learn, you make mistakes, and we say, well, this is not for me. And again, if you don't have the right level of wind speed in a certain region, then wind energy is not for that region. There's no doubt about it. So exactly, yeah. Okay, Daniel, you are talking about the source. I have a last slide after Q&A, and in that last slide, all the sources are mentioned. In the last slide, let me just run that to you. One of the things that I learned when I was doing my MBA from Manchester Business School is the power of referencing. So here is a big, source of information and references, and here you can go and cross-reference and see everything. You see a lot of data is coming up from different resources like World Bank reports and Bloomberg and other stuff, Stanford, and some of the very respectable news agencies in the Middle East region. So here you can see all the references.
And Martina also said thank you. You actually inspired her to contact some suppliers, Europe-based, and sign early partnership on solutions for energy.
Yeah, sure, exactly.
Anybody have any more other questions? We're going to stick around for a while, so if you have any questions, feel free to message them. So, Asim, I have a question from a careers perspective. So, what are the, I guess, would you say some of the career opportunities in this field, in the region? What are going to be some hot jobs coming up?
No, exactly. Actually, I was just talking about this subject in the US in 2014. And I think this was probably one of the questions that was asked in those sessions. Look, the opportunities are very clear that there are opportunities for almost every function when it comes to energy. There are opportunities for the people who are from the technology background, the people who are from supply chain background, people from sourcing background, finance, and all that stuff. The key thing is, and when I was doing my specialized master's in energy industry, the people of energy industry, especially the recruiters and HR people, they always would tell me that, look, I think the challenge with us, energy industry, is that when the oil prices go down, we are very quick to react by shedding the manpower. And the moment price picks, the prices of oil, they pick up, the challenge that comes in front of us is that we have already lost resources, and getting the resources back is a big challenge in oil and gas industry. They understand that challenge. So we all must have heard about the production cut that is expected, that was announced in OPEC's last meeting, which is around, I think, 700,000 barrels. And that's the news about oil prices to go up someday. I don't know when it will happen, but someday, because the production cuts have already been started. So the opportunities are there, and Middle East has always been about the best oil and gas resources that are needed in this region. So in terms of recruitment, I would say that yes, the prices have gone down. There have been layouts in energy companies all over the world, including Middle East region. But people need to just sit back and wait and see how the oil prices going to play. One thing that should be a source of encouragement is that the investments have not been completely shut down. The focus has slightly changed. It's more towards energy efficiency or trying to use I was reading somewhere that Saudi Aramco tries to create electricity from solar in its non-industrial facilities. So instead of burning the useful resources. They are just trying to divert this stuff. So yeah, there are specialized opportunities that are always available, and I'm sure as the oil prices would pick up a little bit more, and as people find it more convenient to start reinvesting in their capital projects, the demand would pick up. It's not going to be a problem with all the markets is when the markets go up, people think they will never go down, right? And when they go down, people think they are never going to go up. So my take is that yeah, the markets have been down for quite some time, and let's hope for the best.
Yes, let's. Thank you for that. And will you be able to share the slides with me so I can share it with the audience?
Absolutely. The slides are all yours. I'll send them to Elena, and then she will share the details with you. And if anybody has any questions or want to know more about some of these data and charts, feel free to drop an email to Elena or myself as convenient.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that. Can you just go back to the slide with your contact information in case anybody wants to reach out to you directly now before we finish?
Yeah, sure. That's the one. So here you can see my LinkedIn contact. Just type in like my spelling, and you will see me same photograph. And my email address is written below as well.
Great, thanks so much, Asim. Any other questions? Anybody else have any other questions? We'll stick around for just a couple more minutes before we wrap up.
I'm seeing some comments, interesting comments like Akram is saying we have to learn how to utilize our spending on renewable energy. That's a great point. And Akram, I was trying exactly to say the same thing when I was talking about Masdar, that if you see some analysts, they think that Masdar's investments didn't go the way they were supposed to go in terms of project execution. So yeah, I mean, it's always great to announce initiatives, but you also have to see what really is needed or the need of the hour. So initiative for the sake of initiatives don't work out. So yeah, I agree. It's a great point you made. Daniel is giving a laughing out loud. I think he's giving laughing out loud on when I said Manchester Business School, when you do your MBA, your citations and your
Yeah,
referencing
I
is
think
very
so.
important.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's what he was referring to.
So Daniel, we both know that you end up with B grades, right? If you don't do that properly. So, okay, I'm just trying to go down and see if there are any more open questions. And,
Sure. Great. Well, if there are no other questions, then I think we'll wrap up. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to add? Any questions for me?
no, I'm just grateful, Alina. Thank you very much for conducting and sponsoring it so well, flawless, and thank you for everybody's time and attention. And if there's anything open or you want to learn more about, feel free to just contact Alina or myself. And best of
Thank
luck to
you.
all of you in your best of luck to all of you in your lives and careers. All the best.
Thanks, awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. It was very interesting. Okay, thank you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. And once I get the slides, I will share it with everybody.